In a bombshell turn of events, a number of Trump-aligned officials have now been charged in Wisconsin in connection with the 2020 fake elector scheme. Kenneth Chesebro, the former Trump campaign attorney, was charged with 1 count of forgery, a felony charge. Attorney Jim Troupis and ex-Trump campaign manager aide Michael Roman were also charged with forgery, also felony charges. The 3 defendants are scheduled for their initial court appearance on September 19th. If the men are convicted, they face a maximum sentence of 6 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. The charges stem from their attempts to throw out hundreds of thousands of absentee ballots, but only in the state of Wisconsin's 2 most Democratic strongholds. The effort was rejected in the Wisconsin Supreme Court in December of 2020, with one justice telling now indicted Jim Troupis, "This lawsuit, Mr. Troupis, smacks of racism." Again, the suit sought to undermine the election results, but only in the state's 2 most diverse counties. From there, despite the effort getting swatted down in court, 10 Republicans immediately went to the state capitol and signed paperwork claiming that they were the state's legitimate electors, and then actually transmitted that false paperwork to Congress and other government agencies. And of course, the Trump team used that false paperwork as a predicate to then claim that the outcome of the election was in doubt, all in an effort to prevent certification of the election results in Congress. In other words, Trump-aligned folks forged documents that would purposefully obfuscate the outcome, and then other Trump-aligned folks pointed to those very documents as proof that the outcome was uncertain, even though it was their own team who'd given them that justification in the first place. Circular logic, all for the express purpose of cheating in the election. And by the way, this strategy was obvious. On December 27th, 2020, Trump was on a call with Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donoghue. Donoghue took contemporaneous notes which were provided to the House Oversight Committee, and those notes show that Trump said that he pressured Rosen and Donoghue to falsely declare that the election was illegal and corrupt even after the Justice Department had not uncovered evidence of widespread voter fraud. Quote, "Just say that the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman." In other words, this was all part of Trump's scheme. The confusion created as the result of competing slates of electors wasn't an unfortunate byproduct here, it was the whole point. Trump needed that confusion, and these electors and officials knowingly gave that to him. To say that these charges are warranted in Wisconsin is an understatement. Granted, they shouldn't come as a surprise. Roman and Chesebro were both charged in the ongoing Fulton County RICO prosecution against Trump and 18 other co-defendants, and Roman was just indicted in Arizona. And let's be clear, far from running away from their involvement in this scheme, Republicans writ large are still trying to justify it. Here's Ted Cruz, who was the first senator to object in 2020, making the argument as to why he will also not commit to accepting the election results this year.
You were the first senator to object to the votes. In 2024, will you certify the election results? Do you plan to object, or will you accept the results regardless of who wins the election?
So, Caitlin, I got to say, I think that's actually a ridiculous question.
It's a yes or no question, though.
No, it's not. Let me explain why it's a ridiculous question. It's not a question. You've ever asked a Democrat that?
Of course.
What Democrat?
But what Democrats?
But hold on a second. What Democrats challenge it?
What Democrats? I know. I've been down this road many times.
But
no Democrat. You cannot compare the 2 situations. We have talked about that. We've seen the audio of that when they protested on the Senate floor.
Hold on a second.
But has you ever had a sitting president who refused to facilitate the peaceful transition of power, refused to acknowledge that his successor won the presidency?
So, A, we did have a peaceful transfer of power. I was there on January 20th. I was there on the swearing in.
Barely.
B, if you look at in 2000, Democrats went to the Senate, or 2001, Democrats went to the Senate floor and objected to George W. Bush. In 2004, they went and objected.
And what did the president do?
In 2016, Democrats went and objected to Donald Trump. And so... Look,
and what happened in 2016? Because I remember a guy named Joe Biden was vice president, and he went to the Senate floor and certified the votes.
So do you
Am I wrong?
So you're asking, will you promise no matter what to agree an election is illegitimate regardless of what happens? And that would be an absurd thing to claim. Like, we have an entire election law system that people challenge elections. Elections get overturned. Voter fraud gets proven. That happens all the time. So
my question for you again, free and fair election, will you accept the results regardless of who wins?
Look, if the Democrats win, I will accept the result, but I'm not going to ignore fraud regardless of what happens.
But was there fraud in 2020?
Of course there was fraud in 2020.
No, there wasn't, and you still objected.
You know for a fact there was 0 voter fraud. Really? What's your basis for that? Show me your evidence.
We've spoken with Governor Kemp. They did 3 hand recounts in the state of Georgia. The director of CISA said that it was the safest, most legitimate election.
But you're saying 0 voter fraud occurred. That's what you just said.
Nothing that would have changed the outcome of that election.
Okay, but that's a different statement.
But no, it's not. Because
yes, it is. You said there was no voter fraud.
There was no voter fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election, and you know that, Senator.
So that's actually
Senator,
not...
With all due respect...
You asked me a question. Do you want me to answer it?
And you didn't answer the question.
Yes, I did.
Cases were thrown out.
Hold on a second.
Said there was no widespread fraud. You're not clearly answering the question. I want to thank you for that.
I'm answering every question. I think the country would have been a lot better off with a determination of what evidence of voter fraud there was that occurred, and instead the media didn't want to hear it and insists voter fraud never occurs. You ought to go back and look at the Carter Baker Commission.
It was the Attorney General, and my question was
it was the media. It was CNN that relentlessly pushed that propaganda. And by the way,
what propaganda? That there was no widespread fraud in the election?
That voter fraud doesn't exist, and anyone who says it does is wearing a tinfoil hat. That is propaganda. And by the way, you never asked Hillary Clinton this. You never asked Stacey Abrams this. You never asked Al Gore this.
With all due respect,
and every
Senator,
one of them said the Republicans who won were illegitimate.
I haven't had any of them on my show. We'll talk to them, but I don't remember there being a president who was refusing to turn over the transition of power and facilitate it.
And Trump didn't either.
My question was on 2024. You did not answer.
Let me say a final point for you. You said they haven't come.
Thank you very much, Senator Ted Cruz.
My opponent, Colin Allred, hasn't either. He ought to come to your show.
Senator Ted Cruz, no answer to that question. Thank you very much.
So lest you think there's any remorse happening here, there's not. What happened in 2020 wasn't a fluke, it was a dry run. It was them testing the fence to see where its weak spots were, knowing full well that they would give it another go and fix what hadn't gone their way last time. These Trump acolytes who have been charged aren't the first corrupt officials involved in this effort, and they won't be the last. The majority of the Republican Party is not only on board, they are broadcasting their intention to do it again. They're normalizing it in the hopes that if they say it out loud, out in the open enough, we won't be as outraged when it happens again. Just like Trump, they think that if they can do their crimes out in the open, that it'll somehow seem less corrupt. But let's be clear, this is not normal, and we cannot normalize it. We have to fight to save our democracy harder than they're fighting to tear it down. These charges are a good start, but we need these cases in every single state where wrongdoing occurred. We need to hold every single person accountable in every state. We need federal charges. We need them to move fast, and we need to send a message that this will not be tolerated. Right now, the only thing protecting us from another scheme like this is the prospect of any accountability. And so we absolutely have to make sure that it's carried out in Wisconsin and everywhere else where these crimes were committed. I've got a really exciting announcement. I've written a book. It's called Shameless. This book explores how Republicans have exploited their historical branding while attacking our democracy, how the media has proven itself a willful participant, and how Democrats can learn from this to rebalance the political scales and save our democracy. It has been a lifelong dream of mine to write my own book, and so I'd like to ask you to pre-order it by clicking the link right here on the screen. And if you buy within this pre-order period, your book is going to come with a signed nameplate. As you know, I've never had a single sponsor on my channel. I don't ask for money or anything like that, but if you're looking for a way to support me, this is hands down the best way to do it. So again, follow the link right here on the screen, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for pre-ordering Shameless. And as always, make sure to subscribe to see more of my content.